everybody. Welcome to
Hi,
the Theater Weebles podcast. We are
welcome.
your hosts. I'm Henry Cameron Allen,
I'm Sarah Spencer.
and we are part of the folk heart of the Folklore Theater Company. And this is the Theater Weebles podcast. Sarah, do you want to
Yay.
tell them quickly what a Weeble is?
A Weeble is it back in the 80s or 70s? I can never remember the decade.
Early 70s, because I'm that old.
Early 60s. Oh, see, I was wrong. I was going to say 80s. It's from an advert where it looks like an egg, and these are the Weebles, and the Weebles, they can wobble, but they never fall down. And so that's where we got our little tag from, because we sometimes have wobbles, often in the theatre, but we never fall down. We get back up. So this is where we bring the podcast to you to discuss all theatrical things and how wonderful we are as humans.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
The theater wobbles, but it doesn't fall down. And that's
Yeah.
part of the fun, I think, of being a theater artist, is meeting all those challenges, because with every challenge comes an opportunity, doesn't it? And I think that, as theater folk, we have to be able to take the wobbles and trust that we
Mm.
will right ourselves, or something will happen. The worst thing could happen. We're going to get into that a little bit today in the confessionals. But so
Oh,
let's jump right in. If you want to know
yeah.
more about Sarah and who she is and what she does and what she's about, and me, go check out episode 1, because we did give a bit of our biographies there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we want people to see episode 1 as well, because it was delightful to
It's
do.
yeah, it's fun as well. That's not from just me. People have said it's fun.
Yes, we're getting good reviews and people leaving comments. It's lovely.
It's so fun. When somebody comments, I'm like, oh my God, yay.
Oh, I know. Every time there's a comment, we both get giddy.
Yeah,
So keep
it's
us
so
giddy. Keep us giddy.
please, please. That'd be great. So today's weekly wobble. What's the wobble of the week?
What's the
Oh,
wobble of the week? You want to go first? Do you want me to?
I think you should go first. I'm intrigued.
Oh, girl, I had a fall. I
No.
fell. Now, I live with certain disabilities, some physical,
Mm,
and it sucks to fall, let me tell you. I've fallen before, and it is just, not only is it embarrassing because it's a public display of your wobble,
yeah.
um, but this one, it was nobody's fault really. I was at a luncheon. I'm the only male member of the Association of United Women in my little Spanish village.
Well,
And,
I love that.
and we had a luncheon, sort of a post International Women's Day luncheon. And happy International Women's Day.
Hey, happy International Women's Day. Thank you as well.
Well, it is International Women's Month, so we're still.
Oh, is it? Oh, yeah, I love
Um,
that.
but they were setting up, and they have these resin chairs, like you would see on a patio, or sometimes at a cafe or something outdoors.
Mhm.
And the one that they gave me was already broken, but nobody paid attention. Nobody noticed, including me. I didn't look at the chair they gave me to sit down in. And the
Yeah.
thing exploded. I mean, I sat down. I didn't even sit down hard. And
Oh,
it
no.
just, a billion shards went everywhere, and I fell hard. Now,
Oh, no.
having my training in stage combat has served me, because I know how to do a pratfall. But it happened so fast and unexpectedly that I didn't quite get,
Yeah.
the swoop that you push out, and do as little damage as possible. So I
Yeah.
um I did kind of land on my elbows, my lower back, and I'm sure I pulled something because my shoulders are really, really sore, my arm, my disabled leg, I have a bad nerve in my left leg, and so that's all feeling. My lower back is a bit out of whack, but they all came running up to me and tried to
Mm,
lift me up, and thank God my assistance dog was there, Animo.
yeah. Yeah.
And you know how it is when a bunch of people gather around you and they want to heave you up, but you're in so
Mhm.
much pain and sort of physical shock that you don't
Mhm.
want to touch
Mm.
you. God forbid something is broken. I had
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
do once. I'll tell you that story sometime. Um, so I said, I'll do it myself. I'll do it myself. And so my beautiful Anima was right there by my side, and he gave me the leverage I needed to stand back up. They gave me another chair, a hard wooden chair, which was so uncomfortable to sit in, especially after a fall. But anyway,
Yeah.
uh, reminded me of those school chairs that you have as a little kid, those wooden
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
chairs.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
not comfy at all.
No.
Well, I had a plate of food and I went home. So now
Oh,
I'm just sort of sore. I don't like taking drugs or medication or anything like that. I don't
okay.
even take an aspirin or paracetamol or anything because
Oh,
it always makes me feel kind of drugged and out of it.
yeah.
So if I
Yeah.
feel a
Yeah.
little different today, that's probably why.
Oh, bless
So
you.
that's my wobble.
I thought you were going to say that you were going to do the, where you have to roll out of a fall. I thought you were going to say
Yes,
you tried to fall.
that's right.
Oh,
I did a
it's so.
backward somersault and rose to my feet and they all applauded. That's right. Ta-da! No, I wish
Oh,
in my mind that happened, but
yes. Yeah. Oh, bless you. It's so horrible when that happens, isn't it?
yeah. But we roll with the punches and we
We do. And you know what? You got back up.
I get knocked down, but I get
Yeah.
up again.
Good for
Meryl,
you.
what's your weekly wobble then?
Oh, my wobble is to do with actually having matches of the heart, believe it or not.
Hmm,
Um,
your
I was
big
so
heart.
embarrassed. I know. So being told that I have an enlarged heart, don't really know what that means, but I was just like, huh, look at that. My heart's big. And I know that. So that was quite nice. But not obviously in the sense of what that could mean health wise, I guess. But then, oh, I ended up having to be admitted to hospital because my heart was doing this weird thing. It was just going super, super fast. I didn't feel well at all. I didn't have the energy to talk. I was just, yeah, it was not good. So obviously you do 111 here in the UK and it says ring for an ambulance. I was like, oh no,
Hmm.
no, okay. And I was at my mum's, so she was like, are you all right? I was like, no. And she's like, all right, okay, what's going on? So I said, and she's like, okay, I'm gonna ring ambulance. I was like, no. She's like, no, I'm ringing them. I was like, no, you're not. And she's like, yes, I am. I was like, no. And this was in the point where I wasn't really able to talk much. So I was like, no, please don't. Anyway, the ambulance came with big sirens on. I was like, oh no, just. And then I started crying because I was like, this is so dramatic. And I thought it's quite amusing that we love drama, in the sense when it's on stage, in film, whatever. But when it comes to me in my own life, I hate it. I hate the whole attention thing. I hate worrying people. I hate the idea of taking up all this time and space for the NHS because it's just so busy, like, so stretched. So I was like,
So
I
in
just
in
need,
the UK and Europe, we have socialized medicine and the
yeah,
NHS, just because we have viewers from all over the world. It's the National Health
mhm.
Service. Is it right?
Yes, National Health Service. Yeah. So we all pay, like, so when you work here, you pay national insurance, and that money kind of goes into this pot that the government then divides out for the hospital, so we get free healthcare basically, which is wonderful. It's amazing. Like nobody asks, what your insurance details are. If you're dying, they will save your life. They will try and save your life. No money's requested or asked for, unless you go private, but that's a different thing. So anyway, yeah, I had to go to hospital. I'm okay. They were wanting to keep me in, but they couldn't because there was no bed. So I was like, that's fine. I don't
Oh,
want to stay in anyway. So they've got to do more tests and things like that. But it's looking like my heart is fine. So that's good. That's the
oh,
main thing.
that's such a relief.
And the specialist was saying, like it's better for you to not have damaged organs because you cannot correct that. That's really hard to correct. So they're suggesting that it's perhaps fibromyalgia that I have. So he said that is a miserable life, but it's better than not having damaged organs. I was like, okay, I'm just going to take your word for it. So there has been a deterioration in that. So my wobble in that sense was lots of attention from the NHS, taking up that time, taking up that space, even though I have paid into the service as well. But knowing I knew my heart was okay, I just needed it to slow down because it was just going too fast, and I was like, this isn't right. Um, and then the wobble from there is what can I do in this state of having an invisible illness?
Mm.
Um, and so that's really hard because it's so, for me, it's easy to just kind of hibernate, stay in this hibernation. But I know spring is just round the corner, and that's where we blossom. But I'm still in this hibernation state of I kind of just don't want to be showing that I'm in pain or anything like that. So, I wondered what other artists do because I can't be the only one that is in chronic pain or, really struggle from day to day. I said to one of my friends, my days are like a lucky dip. I have no idea how I'm going to be from day to day. So that's quite tricky. So I wondered, I suppose in my wobble, I'm reaching out to other artists of if you experience similar things, how do you cope with it? What do you do? How do you manage to book jobs? Do you book jobs? Yeah, what's tell me your story. Because I'm a little bit lost at the moment. Thankfully we have our podcast. So to me today, I was like, this is my outlet of being productive, being creative. Um, and so that's really helped me get up, have a shower, do my hair, do a bit of makeup, that sort of thing. So in that sense, I'm winning. But yeah, I just wondered what anybody else does because wow, it's hard, isn't it?
Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about that actually in our theater is medicine section.
Oh, yay.
So we'll come back round to that because I
Uh,
do have some thoughts on that as a
yeah,
disabled artist myself. And so,
yeah, yeah.
how do we accommodate for whatever our physical wobbles are or emotional wobbles that we're
Yeah,
dealing with? How do we get around
yeah,
them and still
yeah.
be productive?
I
Cool.
love not consistency. Yeah, when it turn oh, you know what I mean.
Coincidence.
Yes,
Coincidence. Yes.
going yeah, I love it. I love
Cool.
it.
Well, I love your heart, and I am glad that it's still ticking and keeping you safe. And
Thank you.
hopefully everything will even out,
Yeah, yeah,
come to a happy rhythm.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Let's move on to
This
tidbit.
Okay, so our fun fact for today, or there is a saying that we say within just the entertainment business, is never work with children or animals. Oh,
I work with
there we
animals every day.
go.
Did you
Me
find
too.
out where that came from?
Yeah, so it was actually still from the same website that we were working on last week, which was londontheatre.co.uk.
Okay.
And so what it says here is, so this is their words that I'm just going to read out. It says, this may just seem like an obvious piece of advice, but it can actually be attributed to a single originator. American comedian and actor W.C.
WC
Fields.
Fields. Yes.
Yeah, who probably used the phrase in a routine At a dinner in Field's honor, Leo Roston said, "Any man who hates dogs and babies can't be all bad." Despite the perception that Fields hated kids and dogs, he regularly enjoyed entertaining children or friends and gave positive replies to kids who expressed an interest in his juggling work.
And he did work with both. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, we're going to set the record straight for W.C. Fields. We're going to redeem his the rumor that he hated children and animals. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, it's definitely attributed to him. That's what I
yeah,
found as well. How
yeah.
has your experience been working with kids and animals on stage?
Oh, so the whole point of, you know, when somebody says to you, don't think of a white panda, and you're like, well, pandas are white and black. But then all of a sudden you're thinking, what if they were just all white? And now you're thinking of a white panda because you were told not to, but your brain doesn't take in the don't. And so all my brain has ever heard is work with children and animals, clearly. Because it's happened
Exactly.
so much, you know. I'm working with children in different forms, depending on their whether they're SEN, so special educational needs. Uh, it's all been quite magical. They've taught me quite a lot. I actually studied this in my master's and my thesis, really, looking at what we learn from the people that we teach. And in my case, in this instance, for the thesis, was that I was working with young adults, and so they had a much younger age mentally because they were of the SEN status. Um, yeah, neurodivergent. So my experience has been so mixed. It's been eclectic. It's been stressful. It's been great. It's been fun. It's been tiring. It's been everything. It's been absolutely everything because the children love to learn and they love to play. I think the hardest thing that I've found is teaching children to use their imagination when they've got to a certain age and they've never used it. It's like, whoa. And I had to put my own feelings aside because it made me feel very sad initially. Um, but then what was great is after a certain amount of time, they came up to me and they're like, "Oh, we play these games in the street now. We're going out with our friends and we're playing these games." And I was like, "Oh, that's amazing." Not only are they playing and teaching other kids, but they are outside the house and they're no longer on the consoles or whatever. So they are experiencing more of themselves, which is just brilliant. Another thing, I worked with this one. Well, it was many children, but this was a good few years ago, and one of them came up to me in rehearsals for Oklahoma, where I'm assistant directing, and he goes, um, "You used to teach me." I was like, "Did I?" And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, "What school?" And he said, "The school." And I was like, "Wow." And I was like, "Sorry." And he went, "You don't recognize me, do you?" And I was like, "Well, no, because you're a man now."
Yeah.
And how old would you have been? And he was like, "Well, I was in year six." So that would have been what, he was 10 years old. And
Mm.
he's like, he said, we put on A Midsummer Night's Dream, and that was my very first play I'd ever been in. I was like, "No way." And so, here he is, just auditioned for RADA to get into drama school and all sorts. It's just like, wow.
Wow. Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So
Did you then remember? Did it click when he said that? Midsummer Night's Dream?
when I was looking at him from across the room, I was like, "Oh yeah, I remember him now. I remember him now." And he was just
Uh,
lovely, so lovely. But he's like full on beard and everything. He could be the next Tom Hardy. You know, he's so good, so good.
wow. Oh.
So wow, that was, yeah, it was very humbling for myself. I'm not gonna lie. Um, really interesting. And then there's been some other people that I've come across that the other theatre that I used to manage, and they're like, "Oh, do you remember me?" And I'm like, "Yeah, where from?" And they're like, "Oh, school." And I'm like, "Oh yeah." They're like, "Yeah, no, I'm in the industry now." I'm like, wow. So that's
There's a,
pretty cool.
there's a ripple effect when you light a fuse. I don't
Yeah.
think I've ever worked with animals on stage. I mean, a few
Mm.
actors I could categorize. Uh, Never eat with actors or animals. Um, but children I've worked with a lot. In
Mhm,
fact, I would say that most of my career, both
mhm.
as an actor and as a director, I mean, I really started out in children's theater. My
Yeah.
first, my first professional acting gig was playing the King of Hearts in Alice in Wonderland. And, children's theater very often, especially in community theater, has a lot of kids.
Mhm,
And I
mhm,
think I think it really depends on one's temperament and
mhm.
patience. It does require the patience of Job
Oh,
because
yeah.
they are very much still children, and they are playful, and they can be, secretive, and they can be, prankish and little
Yeah.
imps, I had a friend who called them timorous beasties. And so it does take a certain quality to be able to work with them as a fellow actor, but also as a director,
Mhm.
um, and as a stage manager. It takes a very particular kind of person who can be firm, but not a
Mhm.
Nazi.
Yeah.
I mean, I've worked with stage managers who have railed into children, made them cry, and all of that. Um, I'm going to be honest. The hardest part of working with children is their mothers,
Really?
who want to, and this is, of course, not all mothers. I love
Mhm,
theater moms. They are a blessing when they're a blessing.
mhm,
They can be a curse when they are meddlesome and they want to dictate, what their child does or how they do it. You also don't quite know what their home life is like and what they're
mm.
to the table. So I always had, I believe that within form there's freedom, especially for,
Yeah.
and so rhythms and rituals in a way. Before they would enter the theater, which I taught from day one is a sacred space and must be
Mhm,
treated like that. What are some other sacred spaces that you know? you know, uh,
mhm.
their church or mosque or synagogue, whatever. Their bedroom is a sacred space, or their home.
Yeah.
Well, maybe a quiet place in their garden or the woods. We talked about how a sacred space because it feels different when you walk into it. A
Yeah.
library or a museum, those are sacred spaces as well. Even government buildings or, school in a way
Mhm,
is a different energy. There's something about it where the energy is more concentrated, more focused, and more reverent. And
mhm,
so I would have them line up outside the theater door, and I would shake their hand and greet each one of them eye to eye contact, and they would
mhm,
file in one at a time. That gave me, as a director or as a teacher, because I had summer programs and things like that, it gave me a clear sense of what they were bringing. Had they
mm.
eaten? Had they had a rough go at home? Were they feeling depressed? I was able to engage eye to eye, one on one, shake their hand and feel what, I'm sort of empathic. And so I
Mhm,
that feeling of touch, that we're able to, you know, touch these kids in a way that is an energy exchange. They get to feel my groundedness, my focus, and it's just sort of that moment. It doesn't take much, but that
yeah.
really helped me, and it helped the quality of our experience together. They were more focused. They
Mhm,
more apt to respect the space and the props and the costumes and things like that. I
yeah.
think theater is a great classroom for life skills education, where they're learning about how to read people, right?
Mhm,
Sometimes you have other actors, adult actors or teens that are in the production or around the production,
mhm,
um, who are also bringing in personal stuff into the space, right?
mhm,
And
mhm.
as a director, we have to juggle all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, we do.
Right? And so I love that. I thrived in that environment working with kids, and to become a mentor
Hmm.
to them through the art of theater is something that I treasure. And like you,
Yeah.
I have kids who are now, in their 30s coming to me
Wow.
saying, you made a difference.
Yeah.
You set me on
Yeah.
a path that I would not have been on otherwise.
Mhm.
They are, still in the arts, still in the theater. I actually have one that reached out to me. She must have been
Mm.
8 or 9 years old, perhaps, when we worked together. And
Yeah.
she may be stepping into the Folklore Theater Company now.
Oh, really? Oh,
Brilliant.
that's so
Absolutely
fun.
brilliant. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So
I
that's,
love
yeah. So we love kids at the Folklore Theater Company.
it. Yeah, because we're big kids ourselves. There's not much of a
We
difference.
are. Yeah. It's all play, isn't it? I mean, play is a verb.
Hey.
And
Yeah.
so let's get back to the verb. Let's get
Yeah.
back to play. Um, I'm going to take a moment to say that we are looking for a child actor currently, the Folklore Theater Company,
Mhm.
do a voiceover project, the intros and outros of our lore series of stories. And it's just a little, tag on the front and back end. So it's not a lot to do, but we're looking for some young talent to be the
Yeah.
voice of the lore. And so if you know of any kids, if you have a kid, if you are a kid, jump into the pool with us. We have so much fun. And we will be doing plays that involve child actors as well, even though we're doing audio theater. And
Yeah.
that's around the world. So
Yee.
yay.
That's
Okay,
great.
it's time for the next section, the confessional.
Oh, okay. So, what is your most embarrassing moment on stage? Ooh.
Ooh.
What a share.
You want me to go first?
Yeah, go on then.
I haven't had many, I have to say, but
Well, that's
I have been embarrassed for other people on the stage.
yeah, yeah.
I can think of three instances where I was embarrassed for another actor on the stage.
Mm,
One was in a professional regional theater. We were doing a Christmas Carol, a
mm,
beautiful production. And we would have schools come in, right? Special matinees for schools. And
mhm.
these were, I can't remember if they were middle school. I think they were middle school or high school. And there was this wonderfully magical, dramatic moment on the stage where it's in Scrooge's memory and they're ice skating,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And the actors in that scene, I wasn't in that scene, but I was, backstage, and they had rollerblades that were
Mhm.
built to look like skates, and it was beautiful. It was just a gorgeous scene with the
Oh.
snow falling, and one of the kids threw a condom on the stage from the audience. I know. It's so bad. And the actors took a tumble. They both like fell over each other and, had to stop the show and hold up the condom and who threw this. And I felt so embarrassed for them. That was horrible.
Oh
The
no.
other one was I was in a show and the flat that the hotel room was painted on
Oh
when
yeah.
it fell. Didn't fall frontwards onto the stage, it fell backwards, thank goodness. So nobody was
Yeah.
injured. But the actor who was in the scene when the set fell, uh, without blinking, said, "Boy, they sure don't make hotels like they used to." I mean, it's like you got to think on your feet. But it was embarrassing. I was embarrassed for the
Oh
for the stage
yeah.
crew because
Yeah. Yeah.
They
That's
didn't
bad.
secure.
That is
But the worst
the worst.
was I was in a show. I can't even remember what the show was, but there was this moment where this grande dame, this old actress playing
Okay.
old duchess or something,
Yeah.
walked elegantly onto the stage. The actress was, bless her, she was in her 80s, and she had this
Uh-huh.
beautiful beaded gown and a tiara, and the gown had a long train,
Okay.
and she's making her cross, and all of a sudden we were like, what's that smell? What's it was this horrible, horrible smell. And she I hate to laugh at it because I was so embarrassed for her, but she had pooed and was dragging it. There was this great brown stripe behind her. The train of her dress was dragging it across the stage.
I got free.
And so, the guards or the footmen or whatever, somebody ran off and grabbed a mop, and they made it a bit where they were, mopping up after her. Oh my God. And then that's not even the worst of it. She
Oh
had
God.
a mic on, and she went down to the dressing rooms,
Yeah.
and she didn't turn her mic off.
Oh
So she was cleaning herself up and cursing, and and the whole audience heard the entire thing. And then the
no.
flush, when she put the toilet. Oh my, it was just this epic. It was epic. It was epic. I felt so embarrassed for her. So those are my
Oh,
that's my confessional for the week. It wasn't about me.
oh, that is brilliant. Oh,
Shh, it's a confessional.
let me just have a moment. Oh, that bit I wasn't expecting you to say it.
Hey, that's why it's a confessional. We tell stories that nobody will tell.
Oh,
But
that is
thank goodness, I
great.
mean, this was years ago. She's long gone,
Yeah. Oh,
so this
bless.
is again,
Yeah.
and no names. I'm not gonna.
No, no, no. That shall not be named. Oh, wow. They were good. They were really good.
Get three for the price of one.
I love, yeah, that really was. So my confessional was the most embarrassing moment on stage. That I've had many actually. Um, but I think my first one, I think the first one's always the worst, isn't it, really? Until you get used to just going, well, whatever. So there's in a production of so this is up in Elgin in Scotland. So it was how old would I have been? What, 15 or something? And so I was in one of my first musicals, which was Children of Eden. And I think
Oh,
I was the King's, I was a Kingsman. So it was Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Um, so and oh, it was still there. Yes, it was Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and I was a Kingsman. So it was first time being in the Amdram situation, first time doing musical theatre as well. And I was like, oh right, okay, this is quite interesting. I like this. Um, so just dancing away, turned around, bent down. All of a sudden, I felt this rip, and I was like, "What was that rip?" Oh no, it was only my pants that had ripped all the way up.
oh no.
Yeah. So then I kind of like just had a feel, and I was like, "Oh, I can feel my underwear through my trousers. This is
Pam.
not good." At 15 years old, obviously, this is the worst thing that could happen, you know. And so I kind of just sort of tried to carry on the dance with my back, to the back of the
Stage,
stage.
yeah, yeah,
So they
yeah.
couldn't, so they didn't have to see my underwear. Um, and yeah, I was mortified because I couldn't find any other trousers as well. And so yeah, I was not impressed. So that was my first embarrassing thing. Um,
Duct tape.
the- oh, yeah, I can't remember what happened from there. Actually, I think that was after that. I then went over my ankle and then couldn't go back on stage. I think that it just all unfolded like that. So yeah. But, um, what else was really embarrassing? I think, do you know, sometimes they've been that embarrassing, I've like blocked it out.
Oh yeah.
uh, oh, there was one. So I was pretending to be this. My character was this crazy woman, and she kind of come across as a bit of an alcoholic, but she just really wasn't very well mentally. And she was completely. It was in Season's Greetings. She was so ecstatic about this monkey that, you know, the monkey that does that
Yeah,
with the
the automaton or whatever that.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it does that anyway. So my character would copy, get really excited, and do it faster or whatever. So in the midst of doing that, I caught my chin with my nail, and I was like, "Oh my god, that really hurt!" And I was like, "Do not let that bring tears to your eyes, because the audience will see."
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I just sort of sensed this sort of weird vibe in the audience of them being concerned, and I was like, "Huh, wonder why they're concerned." Came off stage, went, "That really hurt." Loads of blood on my hand. I was like, "Oh
No.
no." Like, tapped my face with my fingernail and then was bleeding on stage.
Oh,
And then we found my blood when it was coming to the get out. And I was like, "There's my blood." The director was like, "She bleeds for her art."
yes,
It's
it's
really
still in the floorboards to this day. It's become a legend. Left your DNA on that stage.
So it wasn't
Oh,
too, but you know, it was a thing. And then there's just so many other stories that
yeah.
um have happened to other people that, you know, when I've directed them, bless them, the costumes just sort of becoming undone. And they're like, "Oh no."
Well, I want to hear other confessionals. So if you have a story that you want to
Yeah,
share, put them here. And what we'll do, or even if you want to email them to us,
yeah,
we can read them on your behalf. Or if you want to
yeah.
make, let's do this.
Okay.
Make a self tape,
Yes.
you telling your confessional
Oh
or
yeah.
a story from the theater. Just do that
Yeah.
and send it to us, and we'll plop them in this
Oh,
section
that was
in the future. Wouldn't that be
fun. Yeah.
great? But if you don't want to
Yeah.
be on camera, totally understandable. Write it into us, and we'll
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the email is info@folkloretheater.company.
Nee. That's great. Great confessionals.
Good. On to the next.
And what's this then?
What's this
What's
then?
this then? So last week we were talking briefly a little bit about the process of the director, working with actors as well. But for me as a director, I what I really love doing is looking at the script, understanding the script, really taking it apart, almost being like what do you call them? Detective.
Like a
And
dramaturg.
just
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and really kind of getting to grips of what it is that the script, what the playwright's needs are, and how as I, as the director, can fulfill them needs. So, and I love one of the David Mamet said, "Invent nothing, deny nothing." So working on that premise as well, as everything is there, but everything is also available to us.
Right.
And so we can invent nothing but deny nothing. And so you have this oxymoron almost. You're like, how does that work? But
Right.
it does, particularly when you are working with your pieces of theatre, and you've got this wonderful script in front of you, and you're trying to understand the characters and their relationships, the dynamics, the lies, their intentions, what their super objectives are, if you want to be working on the Stanislavski method, um, and really kind of just breaking it down. But then also, how do you tell that story to the audience? How is your audience in this day and age going to react to the story? What can they cope with? Because now, if we put Chekhov on now, it's really hard for our audience to stay awake to stay motivated, to even engage in that
Well,
3
Shakespeare, for
hours.
that matter, Shakespeare too. I mean, any classic, any Ibsen.
Yeah. So what do we do now? It's I suppose it's the oh, and the word's gone straight out of my head, sorry. Um yeah, it's looking at the needs of our audience as well, and how they're best able to receive a story. So what's great about theatre is we're starting to use lots of different ways in which we can tell stories. So we're being interactive. We're starting to use more so the projections, which is really good fun. We can use a video. We're sort of combining all sorts of different types and genres of theatre and creating a sort of masterpiece almost. Um, so there's always that to consider. How do I begin to tell this story? And obviously, it comes down to budget as well, because you might have a way in which you want to share the story in a really grand or grandiose way, and then you go, oh, I've not got that budget. So you have to find different ways in which you can do it. And so it's fascinating to look at how you do that, to be inventive while still not denying anything within your piece. Um, and it's sometimes, for me, definitely, I don't like to work from the ego. Find it doesn't go anywhere. So if I approach my script in a very authentic way of being aware of um holding space for everybody that's going to be involved, and that means from audience to stage management to actors to the playwright and beyond, anything is possible. um and so what I find in doing that is sort of, obviously I've got my own ideas, but then when we come together as a team, it's really good to be just working with everybody else and finding out what others think and see. And I thrive off of working organically with other people. Yes, I have an idea. I've got a rough guideline, but how I'm going to get there, I don't know. I allow that to happen organically, to unfold as it needs to, so
Mhm.
that we can all learn in that process as well. So it's a beautiful journey, and I know when I'm directing, I ask questions. I ask a lot of questions, and they'll probably sound really silly, to the point that my actors may not think that I know what I'm on about. But what I do is I'm testing to see where they're at and where I need to be able to support them, so then I can bring forth what it is I'm looking at or I see in them, and what I see in the production, and how they marry together, and how we thread it together as well. Um, so hopefully that's made sense in the sense of and the importance of understanding the script, because everything is there, the whole world is there. It's just there for you to explore and open. And I like to tease it in a nurturing manner. Mm,
I love that. We're very similar in that way. I usually,
yeah,
when I approach a project as a director, and I think I may have said this before, I'm a better director for having been an actor first.
yeah. We were talking about that last week. Yeah.
A trained actor, I studied at the National Theatre Conservatory for 3 years
Hmm.
and was part of the professional company for that final year at the Denver
Hmm.
Theater Company, which is a Tony Award winning regional theater. Brilliant. And so I learned a lot. And when I transitioned from being an actor to a director, it was because I felt like I could say more artistically than I could as an actor. And I have no regrets. I
Mm,
really, I felt like my training served me beautifully as a
mm,
director. And I tend to approach, I have three things. Um, Honor the text,
mm,
you know, study not only the text, but the biography of the playwright. Where were they coming
yeah.
from? Like, what was their story? Is always
Hmm.
interesting. What informed this play? Why did they write this play? Whether it's a
Yeah.
modern or classical text, what was going on in the world at that time that
Mm,
brought this play out to the fore.
Yeah.
Um,
And who were their inspirations as well? Who informed them of their journey?
Even stylistically, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The other is know your audience, as you say.
Yeah.
That's an expression we use a lot in the theater. Know your audience. You have to, you could be all kinds of lofty, artsy fartsy,
Yeah.
but if you're not knowing who you're playing to, it's not going to come across. And so I think there's a respect for the audience, a respect for the time, without dumbing it down. You want to give your
Mhm.
audience credit for being able to not fall asleep, for instance. To be able to engage with a especially classic theater, classical stories that may not be as, quick to engage everyone, that there are those quieter moments,
Yeah.
where the play is allowed to breathe a bit, right?
Mhm. Mm.
I love those quiet moments. And I try, even with the Folklore Theater Company, these audio plays that we do, I try to make sure that that air, that
Mm.
breath is there, because the
Mm.
plays
Yeah.
are so short, they're only 30 minutes. And if every moment is packed, where does the audience get to breathe and take in what they've just heard or what they've just seen? So I tend to do that. And then with the actors, um, I give actors credit for bringing what hasn't been given by the playwright.
Mhm.
Each actor has their own biography and their own world of
Yeah.
experience and what they've seen or heard throughout their lives to draw upon.
Yeah.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so to trust that, to trust my actors to fill in the gaps. I'm also a very specific director. If I'm not clear in a moment why that moment is happening or where the character was before they walked into the room,
Mhm.
right? Are they constipated? Did they stub their toe? Did they have a spat with their spouse? Things like that that the actor has to invent, because you want to bring the biography of your character onto the stage with you,
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right? So I'm really about those kinds of specifics, but all I am really as a director is a permission giver.
Mm. Mm.
Try it. Right? I
Yeah.
will let you know if it doesn't work from where I sit. I have to put on the cap of the audience. I tend to sit in various parts of the theater to see how
Absolutely.
that scene looks, or how, a character, if I can't see the expression on their face and I need to, what can we
Mhm.
do to open it up? Things like the little
Mm.
technical things.
Yeah.
And then just to make sure that things are on track. I give a lot of freedom, but I also reserve the right as director to say, let's table that for another moment, or I see where you're going with that, but let's try it this way,
Yeah.
and let's try it this way. I always provide the space to try it. Um,
Mhm.
when I had when I was in Massachusetts with the Folklore Theater Company, which at that time was a live theater, and we
Mhm.
were working with community actors. I mean, we weren't working with, you know, people of the theater. These were the
Yeah.
folk themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
We had the brilliant opportunity to do a play. Actually, we did two of her plays. She was the first American woman playwright,
Oh, wow.
18th century. I know
Wow.
nobody's heard of her. Judith Sargent Murray. I'm going to say her name. Her plays are brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And she wrote in the speech of the time. Now, that was not long after Shakespeare. I mean, that was only, a couple hundred
Yeah.
years after Shakespeare. So it is a heightened kind of a tone. And they were speaking, this is around the time of the Revolutionary War. So they were speaking British English.
Mhm. Mhm.
American didn't really exist yet. So to bring that quality across with untrained actors,
Yeah.
required us to pick apart line by line every line of script and text so that they knew precisely what they were saying
Mm,
and that I knew precisely what they were saying. More importantly, it
yeah.
had to come across. And what we found in that work was such a richness. You know, I've done a lot of Shakespeare, and what we know about Shakespeare is that very often when we're, there have been different printings of those plays over time, but they
Mhm,
all stem from the first folio. And
mhm.
because of the printing press at the time, the punctuation wasn't always clear. A
Yeah,
little
yeah,
splotch of ink could look like a comma, right?
yeah.
Or it could be a period. You don't know until you really delve into the text and
Mhm.
start to pick it apart and try it as if it were a comma or a semicolon or a period, right? Try it in different ways to see what makes sense in the context of the play. And so I love that stuff. I love
Yeah,
digging and exploring
yeah,
and all that.
yeah. Oh, have you ever seen, and I can't remember what they did this for, I'd have to find out, but it was a load of people that have played Hamlet, and it was to be or not to be. That is the question. They were just doing that sort of.
Yeah,
They weren't doing the whole soliloquy, but they were just doing that first bit, and every actor delivered it very differently, and they spiked the words of every different word. So like the first person, I can't remember who it was. I just remember Benedict Cumberbatch being in it, and I think him who played Doctor Who.
David Tennant.
Anyway, that's it, David Tennant. I'm sure David Tennant was in it as well. Anyway, and so they all came on stage delivering their lines. But the first one would be to be or not to be, and then the other person would be to be, and it's
That's
really good.
good
And
stuff.
so obviously to do that, you're really playing around with your punctuation. You're playing around with the what we'd call a spike word, and where your emphasis is, which also plays around with the intonation and what your objective is as well. Like, kind of what verb are you playing at this moment in time?
Right.
So all of that encompasses your grammar, which is quite fascinating, isn't it? You just play around with a comma, an exclamation mark, a full stop, a question mark. All of it changes everything. Like
Well,
if
and
you
it
put a question,
changes from whether you're doing verse or prose, right?
absolute,
And then
yeah,
also with Shakespeare, it's a bit harder because there's a form to follow. There's the iambic pentameter that he wrote in
yeah,
that, he wrote in prose as well, but sometimes it's a mix. And
yeah,
sometimes he reverses it for
yeah,
emphasis,
yeah.
right? So there are so many ways to attack text, but I think it's always worthwhile. And our job as directors really is to serve the text
Mhm.
whilst serving the audience and the actors.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
all free.
yeah. And it's a wonderful journey. I love it. I find it so fascinating
Yeah.
because there's no right or wrong way at all.
Yeah. But there has to be
It's
that foundation of trust,
oh yeah,
trusting your
trust.
actors, trusting your audience, and being, moreover,
Mhm.
trustworthy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a
On to the
huge thing.
next. On to
Yay!
the next.
So this is where we talk about the theatrical triage of self-care, life skills, and mental health. So you're saying that all going to tie in to
What we were
um
talking about before, what
the
you were talking about in terms of the question that you asked
mm,
to the listeners, the viewers, is how do you navigate when you are dealing with a health problem, uh,
mm,
showing up fully when your body isn't cooperating, right?
yeah, yeah.
So I live with different kinds of disabilities. I have my physical disability that I mentioned, with my leg nerve.
Mhm.
That doesn't really affect my work too much. other than I can't sit for extended periods of time and I can't stand for extended periods of time without sitting. So it's,
Mm.
have to be, bothers me sometimes. I have to be aware of it. But I also live with CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress, and
Mm.
stemming from childhood onward.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I have found is, especially since the passing of my son, is that on certain days, like milestone days, birthday, day of passing, Tuesdays, whatever, um,
Yeah.
I often find myself experiencing sleep paralysis.
Mm.
And that's when you are fully aware that you're dreaming. You're awake within your dream, you're lucid dreaming, but you can't wiggle your toe. You can't open your eyes. You know, you want to get up. You know, you want to break out of it. You know, you've got a meeting that you've got to
Mhm.
get to, but your body doesn't cooperate. How do you navigate that?
Mm.
And also, other things come, other triggers will come along with that unexpected, numbness or sleepiness and, lethargy where you just can't bring yourself to do anything. And
Mhm.
so what I've managed to do for myself is I've built my career around it. I actually allow for it. The first couple of times I had sleep paralysis, it was frightening. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
I, I didn't know if I had had a stroke or if I was in a coma or if I was dead because I couldn't break out of
That's
it.
scary. Yeah.
And I
Wow.
was in a dream state. I mean, I could see and feel and, all the things we experience in a dream, that was all present. I wasn't in some kind of limbo
Mm.
blackness. It was vivid. I was dreaming. I knew it.
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah.
and over time, as it happened over and over again, I started to realize what it was. It was my body's way of protecting me from waking triggers by not
Ah.
allowing me to break out of my sleep.
Oh.
And I could sit in gratitude with that because
Yeah.
triggers suck. Triggers are
Yeah.
horrible and
Horrible.
they're like a tsunami. You can't, predict them. They'll
Yep.
clock you out of the blue, knock the wind out of you, knock you off your feet, and then you've got
Mm.
to avoid drowning in them. I mean, it's just like a tsunami.
Yeah.
And especially when it's tied to grief or trauma, it
Yeah.
feels very much that way. And so what started to happen when I just sort of leaned into it and
Mm.
allowed and created the space for it in my life,
Yeah.
I started to realize that there's really no one on the planet who can tell you that your dreaming state and your waking state are different. That one isn't real and the other one, I mean,
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
in our time, it feels like the waking state is a dream, often like a nightmare, the state of the
Oh,
world.
right. Absolutely. Yeah.
But what happens with me in my dream state is that I will have epiphanies. I will have great wisdom come to me
Yeah.
that I can bring into my waking life. So I have a dream life and I have a
Yeah.
waking life, and
Mm.
starting to interact with one another in
Wow.
interesting ways. And so as an artist, that's really brought me um a richer waking experience because I'm able to bring things from my dream state into my waking life. And so because I'm creating my own work,
Mm-hmm.
because I am really creating my own schedule, as the founder, producer, director, artistic director of a theater,
Yeah.
I am also hypersensitive, perhaps, to the
Mm-hmm.
needs of the others that are involved. And if they're
Mm.
going through something, we create the space for
Mm-hmm.
them to be on whatever health journey that they're on, physically, mentally, emotionally, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that creates a sense of safety. I mean, you can speak to this. You've been working with me for a while, but I think
Mm.
I want and I hope that it creates a safe space for other artists to be able to breathe into their rhythm, whatever it
Mm.
is, and feel that it can be accommodated professionally as well
Yeah,
as
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. No, you definitely offer a safe space for sure, and we can just turn up and just be how we are, our authentic selves. We don't have to have. I say we. I'm speaking for others there, but I suppose for myself, I don't feel like I have to have um the mask on where I've got it all together and everything's great and yay, I can just turn up as me, which is so nice,
or
so
not,
nice.
as the case may be.
Yeah, because
Sometimes-
there's been times where I'm like, I can't come, I can't turn up.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we
Yeah.
can't show up, and to be
Yeah.
involved professionally, I think in a company, because
Mm,
let's face it, theater is a business. It's not
yeah.
just a bubble bath, right? So
Yeah.
um, there are people depending on us. That adds stress, right? In the professional theater, the dates are booked for the play,
Mm-hmm.
for the run. You have to be able to show up. I mean, yes, there are understudies sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bless them, bless the understudies in the swing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's important I think for those of us that are producing and directing,
Mm-hmm.
to understand that we are not robots. We're
Mm-hmm.
beings, and something will happen, right? I mean, how many meetings? We have a weekly folk art meeting, and how many
Mm-hmm.
meetings have we had everybody there? I don't think we've had one,
No.
right?
No.
Somebody's dealing with a health issue, somebody's involved in another production, somebody was in a car accident, somebody's mother passed, whatever it is,
Yeah.
someone with COVID. We can hold that, we can accommodate that, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm.
uh I think for us, what I hope is helpful is that when
Mm-hmm.
we do have the meeting with whoever is there, that
Yeah.
same night, we have a summary of what the meeting was
Mhm.
about, what was said, action items for the next, so
Oh
that
yeah. Yeah.
everybody gets on the same page. So
Yeah.
communication is vitally
Yeah.
important in creating
Yeah.
that dynamic.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So would you say for in the sense of looking after thyself, just having whatever is being put towards us, whether it be health, mental health, whatever, to just hold it with us and have space with it. Is that what you would say is the best thing to do?
If possible. I mean, I think sometimes it's not possible to do that.
Mm. Hmm.
Sometimes we have to be there
Yeah.
in spite of having the flu. You've got to
Mm.
show up, right?
Yeah.
Um, Case in point was my fall this week. I
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
in a world of pain, and yet I had to facilitate a workshop in the
Yeah.
Three Part Manifesto with the company, right? I had to
Yeah.
be there for that. And so I did have to pull up my big boy pants and say, I'm going to bite the bullet. I'm going to get through this, and then I'm going to crash.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes
And
as
it's no
artists, we have to do that.
Yeah, it's knowing when you can do that and when you can't, and then when it's detrimental to you as well.
Right.
That is, it's a very fine line. It's a balance,
It
isn't
is
it? I suppose
very
I think getting work-life balance as well. So, um, yeah, it's very tricky. Um, how would you say you get your balance?
I think knowing thyself, right? On the
Mm.
on the Oracle of Delphi over the cave, right?
Yeah,
Those two words, know thyself,
yeah,
are carved into stone. And that is something I think should be the mantra for every artist.
hmm,
You have to know yourself, because yourself with a capital S is your toolkit. You are the instrument.
mm-hmm.
Just like a musician has to know their particular instrument, because no two violins have the same resonance, right? They're similar sometimes, but every artist is unique. And so you have to
Mm,
know your instrument, you have to know yourself with a capital S, so that
mhm,
you can set healthy boundaries for yourself. You can express to the people that you're working with, these are my wobbles,
yeah, yeah,
right? So that people get to know you and get to respect, they have the opportunity to respect what you live with,
yes.
sometimes on a day-to-day basis. For me,
Mhm,
it's not day-to-day. For me, it's, I know very specifically the dates that trigger me that I
mhm,
cannot control.
mhm, mhm.
And so I warn people, I let them know, listen, this milestone is coming up and I know myself, I know what's going to happen. So we're going to take a break this week so that I can get through this week and then we'll get back on track, right? Things like
Yeah,
that. So I think it's really knowing yourself, knowing
yeah,
capable of, knowing how you act and react when you're going through something physical, emotional, or mental.
yeah. Shall we say next week in our podcast we do 5 top tips to get to know yourself?
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah, because there's so many ways in which you can get to know yourself. But if we've got 5 top tips, maybe that'll help our listeners, ourselves, if we feel like we're going off on a tangent or something, which might be nice as well. And yeah, it's always good to get to know yourself, isn't it?
It is. And there are tips and tricks. And I know that some of our viewers have been through that process. So I would love you to comment to help
Yeah.
us with your tips as well. Bring your ideas to the fore. What are your top 3
Mm-hmm.
ways of knowing yourself so that you can share yourself with
Yeah.
your collaborators, your colleagues, and
Yeah.
directors?
Yeah, I'd love to know how people balance it, in the sense of where do they feel their balance? And I suppose it comes down to boundaries as well, doesn't it? So it's like, this is a boundary that I have for my own well-being. And whereas, so perhaps, the next person will be like, their boundary is going to be much further down the road. And it's about still holding respect for that, isn't it? Especially in the industry that we work in,
Yeah.
because it can be very much you turn up regardless of whether you're dying or not. You turn up regardless of who's died. And the way that I was taught at drama school is if somebody dies and you're working and you've got a gig, the show must go on.
Yep, that's tradition.
And whilst I see that that is the point, and there is weight in that, it also is still a job. And so, in what other area of work would you work that, say, your mum has just died, and then they go, well, no, sorry, Joanne, but you need to come and do the admin for the day. The work still needs to be done.
Yep.
So it's so, and like, I could go into a massive rant about this in the sense of like the Me Too movement and how, being sexually exploited or being exploited with how we look and whatever, all of that comes into what we've been learned of. This is how the industry is. You don't like it, off you pop. And so you go, all right, okay, I'll put up with this. But I feel like now there's our new generations that are coming through. It's like, actually, you can't get away with saying that now. We're having to be more diverse, which is great, and more inclusive, which is fabulous.
So
And such a breath of fresh air when I see not a plus size model, a person that looks like she lives life, she enjoys her food, she's not fat nor skinny,
right.
she is a woman, and she's wearing clothes that I think, actually, I'm going to try and buy that now because I look more like her. So, and it's just I'm like, oh, it's a breath of
We're
fresh
gonna
air. And
we're gonna bring that into the confessional next week.
yes, we are, because next week, what to expect is, have you been hired solely on what you look like, and why we don't see Macbeth on stage. Ooh. So that's all for this week, folks. Thank you so
Little
much.
thumbs up.
Pleasure. Uh, And yeah, we'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week. One last thing I wanted to say that just came to me about what we were talking about is that not all theaters are built the same.
Mm,
You have less flexibility in a West End or Broadway production than you would in an Amdram or community theater situation,
mm,
right? The
mm.
expectations are going to be different. The approach to professionalism is different, right?
Yeah.
I would love to add that to our comments as well. How do you define professionalism? I want that to be a conversation.
Uh,
Uh,
yeah, we'll make it professional.
right. But for anyone who's looking, for anyone who does struggle physically, mentally, emotionally, know that there is at least one theater company
Hmm.
that has this in mind. Even the productions that we are doing, right? These audio
Hmm.
theater productions for the Lore series, they're only
Yeah.
30 minutes. They're only 30 minutes. That's right.
Yeah.
He agrees. They're only 30 minutes. And so that means that your investment of time is reduced. You don't have to show up for a 4-hour rehearsal. You don't have to show up for, a 2-hour production that you have to do every day, 8 shows a week for a year, right? There are options out there. And so, and other ones too, besides us, obviously, besides a folklore theater company. But know that if you are physically disabled, struggling emotionally or mentally, there is a place where you can come that's a safe environment, that's big hearts,
Mm.
big hearts.
Yeah.
The core of our company, we call the folk heart, in fact. And so that exists. And I can't imagine we're the only ones on the planet. So seek out, know thyself enough to seek out companies that can accommodate
Hmm.
who you are 100% as you are today.
Yeah. Yes.
That's what I wanted to say about that.
That was great. Great. Thank you so much, Henry. It's
Great.
been an absolute blast.
Always,
Oh,
always.
well, thank you
Again,
so much.
remember, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel,
Yeah.
comment,
Oh, yeah.
share the
Do.
love.
Yeah.
We've had 41 views for our first episode, but only 8 thumbs up, 8 likes.
Oh.
Oh, look, see, I'm talking about it. Give us a thumbs up, like it,
Yeah.
share it, comment. The algorithms love that, and so do we. And thanks for
Yeah, we
being
do.
here. See you next week.
See you next week. Bye. Much love.